Hey everybody. Okay. Just mess with a couple settings really fast and then we will get into it. All right. So tonight, this is going to be a fairly quick demo compared to the other nights. The reason being is we're just doing a final color pass over our limited palette color pass, for lack of a better word. Yeah, so our limited palette painting is going to get a treatment of our full palette on top of it, some opaque, some glazed. But because we're like 90% of the way there, 70, 80% of the way there, it's not going to take too long. The things we're going to look for is to go for our true saturation with our orange, our true saturation with our green and our leaf, because remember we could only make that with yellow, ochre, and black last week. And then we'll look for some honest blues, and we'll do a little bit in the background with some purples and things like that, just to kind of round it out the color scheme. But before we get started, I got to put the paints out. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that we are only working, or we're going to be working in glazes and some opaque passages to kind of color correct here. So that means that we're not going to be needing a lot of paint. So you'll see me put out a lot less paint than I might normally put out for a painting session. You know, just very little amounts of paint because we don't need as much for this because we already have our values and we already have our local kind of general color in place. But this is going to be full palette, so it's going to go from, well, I'll kind of give you the Bob Ross treatment and say the colors out loud as I'm doing them. Titanium white, your phthalo green, or your viridians. Either one works. They're the same hue, only the phthalo green is a little bit more transparent and darker. The viridian is more opaque and a little bit lighter, but they serve the same purpose. Some ultramarine blue. Alizarin crimson. Oh, that's a little, way too much paint there, but. Our cad red light. Our cadmium yellow. Uh-oh. We have a dead tube. The oil all dried out in this one. Oh no. 1 second. Let me get a new cadmium yellow. cadmium yellow, our yellow ochre, burnt umber. We'll use up the last of the tube of burnt umber. Quite a bit there, but I'll save it. And then last but not least, ivory black. And that is our full color palette. So to give you the rundown again, we have ivory black, burnt umber, yellow ochre, cadmium yellow light, cadmium red, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, viridian or phthalo green. They're both the same hue. They do the same job, but one's opaque, one's transparent. Phthalo is very, very strong too, so if you have phthalo, be careful. And then titanium white. All right. So now to get, and then our medium. Old Faithful. Our liquid impasto medium. Or liquid medium for those of you that are using the liquid stuff. Again, they're both the exact same. I just use the impasto because my table's at an angle and the impasto medium doesn't slide off, but they do functionally the same job. Okay. So now, I'm going to start background to foreground, and I'm going to go through and begin working up my final colors, okay? So, it's going to look something like this. So I already see the gray in this area does okay. I think I want to do a little bit bluer of a gray, right? So there's a couple ways I could do that. I could just do black and white again and just add a little blue to it, but I think I want it to lean a little more towards gray, so I'm going to grab burnt umber and ultramarine blue and make a chromatic black that I can shift towards brown or blue, a warmer or cooler. Grab a little bit of the white. And see, now I have this nice neutral gray. It's pretty much the same gray of my palette. I'm going to add a little bit more blue in there. Something like that. Grab quite a bit of medium. Then now, I'm not going to actually overpaint this. I'm going to glaze. So I'm going to take this thinned out with medium, not with solvent, area of paint so that it's become nice and translucent. I'm going to go in and kind of scrub this area like so. So the original paint kind of shows through a little bit. Now, as I'm working my way down, you can't really see what I'm doing because of the reference photo. I'm sorry about that. But as I'm working my way down, I'm going to go a little bit brighter in the corner. Get a little bit opaque towards the corner where the light's coming in. Something like that. And then now I see in the reference photo, it warms up into a greenish color. So I'm going to go into the yellow ochre and do this nice dull green throughout here. A little bit more honest of a green because we have a true blue here, not the ivory black that we were using last week. To kind of warm this up a little bit with that green, that warm yellow into that green. Then I'm going to dip into and transition back into the burnt umber. I'm seeing that brown, like rusty color starting to come back up. And then I'm actually going to dip into my alizarin here to keep it in this like really warm red family with the burnt umber. Because again, burnt umber, like we had mentioned previously, is kind of like a very, very neutral and dull red, right? Super neutral, super dull red. Just like ivory black is a super neutral, super dull blue. So what I can do is this intense alizarin crimson color, I can get some of that nice rich color and then keep it in the red family, keep it firmly planted in the red family, and knock it back a little bit. So I have this nice chromatic brown, reddish brown rust color that I can use throughout here. Almost like a burnt sienna, but the benefit to it over burnt sienna is that this is translucent. Whereas burnt sienna is very, very opaque. So now I'm going to dip into some phthalo, mix it into that blue mixture so I can get a nice rich green, along with some of the yellow ochre. So now we're getting to this like true green territory. And just toss in a few of those little colors in there. Being pretty brushy with it, not trying to get super detailed because again, it's the background. But just trying to add a little bit of interest to the area. All right, back into the red. And then now we're going to go into our chromatic black, pure this time, with burnt umber and ultramarine blue throughout here. And again, it's a little bit of overpainting. I'm trying to still leave some areas glazed where you can see the underpainting underneath. So there's some nice interest with it. So it's not just fully, bogged down in overpaint where you're just repainting the same thing over and over again. While simultaneously still giving it some more color and more life. The other one was it had really good values. Everything was nice in line with values in the local color. But the actual hue of everything was very dull still. Even though on YouTube, it appeared very, very red. Or not red, but very, very saturated. Which in real life, it was not saturated. After this, I'll post to my Instagram the progress shots of it. And you'll see what it actually looked like in that second stage. And now because this is nice and dry, I can come in, because our underpainting is nice and dry, I can come in and wipe stuff out and go right back to the underpainting. That's kind of the beauty of working in this very indirect method of layer upon layer, is that if I accidentally go like, oops, and put some paint where I don't want it, I can just kind of come in, since all this paint is nice and stable and dry, and just wipe it out really easily. All right, mix up a little bit more of this chromatic dark. And I'm not really concerned with the mixture being exactly the same each time because I want some variation. I'm honestly not even fully mixing the two together on my palette. There's streaks of blue and brown inside of this mixture because I want some of that, push-pull, that grittiness in the actual background here. Sometimes you don't want to actually mix everything to a homogeneous single color on your palette. Like here, I'm going to grab some alizarin crimson, toss it in here, and just go, right? It's not fully mixed like at all. But it's exactly what I want. It's a little bit loose. And I'll actually grab some pure alizarin and toss this in here. Maybe mix it with a little bit of liquid medium so it becomes even more transparent. And glaze it through here. Maybe just take some pure liquid and just kind of go through over the signature area from before. Maybe toss in a little bit of that brown. And then just kind of go in and massage it to reveal the signature. Grab a new towel. But because we have this nice controlled process working through each stage and letting it dry, I have a lot of freedom here. Like, I did not have to be careful around this orange because I know I can just wipe it away if I go over the orange where I don't want to, right? That's when, even though it does feel a little bit, tough when you're kind of bogged down with the kind of monotony of the processes, it does help to do these stages because you get this freedom in these later stages to really play with color and, have fun, right? You do a lot of work up front to give you a really nice safety net so you can take risks with color. Like, for example, I'm going to take pure ultramarine blue here and see if I can make it work as a dark value underneath this orange to really make the orange pop. Just pure blue. Nice and dark. Let that kind of mix in with the surrounding areas. And then scumble a little bit in this area just to get this echo of the pure blue there. Let's grab a little bit of the burnt umber and the alizarin as well. Kind of come in. Oop. You can see really, really loose. I'm just playing with color at this point. Using my reference still. Like looking at my reference and getting a feeling of the color. And then just kind of putting a color down, see how it works. If like I put down a brown on my painting and I'm like, that's a little too warm. Maybe I want to cool it off. What do I want to cool it off with? Let's grab some phthalo and just mix that phthalo in right next to, or right in here, on top of that burnt umber, Maybe grab a little medium because it's looking a little thick and not quite as glossy, and just kind of paint that in right away. Doing a lot of mixing on the painting itself. Maybe grab this gray again, right? Add a little bit more white into it and kind of use it for the highlights down here. Because this gray was made out of the burnt umber and the ultramarine, which is in this area, so it's not out of the question of it being applied there, right? And then now I'm going to use this really nice dark brownish, reddish, value that I made here with the alizarin and the burnt umber to surround the leaf, because that warm red will really play off of the greens, that because they're complements, it'll push those greens forward once I start getting into the leaf and the actual orange. But again, because I'm working back to front, I'm doing kind of the whole background and getting the background to basically a finish before moving on into the orange and the actual subject of the painting. Something like that. Okay, let's get into the orange. So now, I can probably use that gray later. So that'll be for the leaf, and then this little area will be for the actual orange itself. The other thing too is I'm not just throwing away these colors, I'm mixing them together. A rough mix like I usually do. Let's just close that color. And then putting them off to the side here, just underneath my main tubes, or main tube colors, so that if I need to jump back into the like green, blue, grayish color that I had over here, I have it there. If I need to jump into that burnt umber and alizarin crimson mixture, I've got it right there. I can just kind of dip right into it. I don't have to mix more of it, you know. Convenience sake. That way you can kind of jump back in. If there's a color that you really definitely don't need, then either mix it into some of your other colors, see what it makes, or just wipe it off. But for me, I will probably end up using those colors at some point, so I'm going to leave them there. All right. The orange proper. Okay, so again, we're going to go back to front, right? So we're going to do the things that are furthest away from us and work our way forward. So the thing that is furthest away from us on the orange is this shadow side right here. So now, one thing that I saw that I could not get before is this really dark, warm orange outline that's right along the terminating edge of the orange. It blends into the background, but it's really dark and warm. So we'll take our alizarin, or our cad red, and our burnt umber. Again, this will darken and dull, but keep it firmly within the red family, right? Something like that, maybe a little bit more. And then maybe a touch, just a touch of cad yellow. It's close. I think I'm going to take just pure cad red now onto the brush and kind of work that into that edge. Doing some mixing on the palette itself. Or on the painting itself, rather. Might take a couple passes, but we'll get there. Now, actually, I'm going to dip into that cool color again from before. And mix that in, just a little hint of it as I transition into the core of shadow, mid-tone shadow. Oops, too much alizarin. Try that mixture again. All right, just working along this shadow edge. Again, back to front, back to front. That's kind of a mantra that you can repeat to yourself, is like back to front, dark to light, and then thin to thick. So thinly laid paint, building up into thin paint, dark values working towards your light values in oil, and then back to front. Do your background or your thing that's furthest away in the picture plane first, and then slowly work your way to the midground and then to the foreground. starting with that background though, the furthest away. The reason is it allows you to layer things. So if you do the whole background, then you want to layer stuff on top of it. That's easier than if you do the foreground and then you try to paint the background around your foreground. That doesn't really work that well. You have to do a lot of like really careful like painting around your objects or mask the objects off or whatever. It's a pain in the ass. Instead, background to foreground. All right, so now we're going to get into... Oh, no, we still have a little bit of shadows left. Sorry. Got ahead of myself. This Oopsie Alizarin Crimson color, where I grabbed a little bit too much of it, is actually going to work really nicely in this bottom shadow here. Because this shadow right here is reflecting a lot of the warmth from the ground that it's on. So it warms up quite nicely through here. I'm just kind of glazing and scumbling here. It might look like I'm painting opaque on the screen, but up close I can still see the values and everything from the previous stage of painting. Dip into that burnt umber and alizarin that we made previously and we kept up there. And now this is the risk of needing or putting out small amounts of paint. I've actually already worked through my cadmium red here, so I'm going to put out a little bit more. Always put out a little bit more than you think you might need for the painting session. And then if you need more, you can put out more, but that way you're not constantly going back to your tubes and messing up the flow of your painting. I understand wanting to be frugal with the paints because, you know, paints are expensive and that kind of thing, but, you know, they're just a tool to create your artwork with, so use them as such. Like, if you need to put out a little more paint to keep that nice flow going, go for it, you know. That's worth it. That's worth the cost of admission to the oil painting game. All right. So now our shadow is pretty much done. Okay, now we're going to get into the orange itself. We're going to mix our initial dull orange that we had before with just the yellow ochre and cad red. We're going to make a couple oranges here. Your dull orange. Then we're going to get our cadmium yellow light or cadmium lemon, whatever you have, your light yellow, your light and intense yellow, plus our cadmium red. And now we get a much more intense orange. Might not look like it on screen, but it definitely is a more intense orange. Lean that a little more towards yellow. And then we'll do the same thing with our bright yellow. And then a touch of the alizarin crimson. All right. Just glazing some reds in here. Going in for my yellow now. We're yellowy orange. Needs more yellow. Sorry about that little stream hiccup. All right, give the brush a quick rinse. So now I'm going to go in and get a much cleaner yellow. There we go. Just kind of rub that glaze in there. Again, I'm not trying to really change too much about what we did previously in terms of the values. I just want to intensify the colors. You know, maybe look for areas where I can adjust ever so slightly. The values or the drawing maybe. Just working my way around the light mass, the general light mass. I'm kind of ignoring the highlights, sort of. I don't want to bog them down with too much color, but I'm not being too precious about them because I know I'm going to go, again, we're working back to front, dark to light, thin to thick. I know I'm going to go thinner and lighter, or thicker and lighter there towards the end because that's the frontmost point of the orange before we get into the stem. So, the stem and the leaf. So I have a little bit more leeway in there. leave the words blank. Don't worry about words for right now. Once you get more comfortable with paint, definitely include the words. But for right now, until you get used to utilizing the paint and manipulating it, don't worry about the words. Reason being is words and still lives are fine, but as humans, we kind of gravitate towards things we can read first. So if we're going to look straight at that label with those words immediately when we look at your still life. So what'll end up happening is if the words are a little off, or if the if there's something that's weird about that area of the painting, we're never going to be able to leave that area visually and look at other things. So that's why I say don't worry about the words right now and wait until you're comfortable with paint before trying to tackle something complex like words moving around the curve of a surface. That said, do paint in the label and the value shift and gradients that are happening on the label itself. But just don't worry about any specifically words. Like if there's any symbols on the label, you can go ahead and paint those, but leave the words out of it for right now. All right. Just continuing to go around here, adjusting colors as I go. Punching up some of these yellows in here, because even though it is, we call it an orange, they're actually quite yellow, or at least they're an orange that leans towards the yellow side more than the red side. So we're just playing that up a little bit with some of these yellows, and then now we're going to go back in with just thick, pure white. And add some highlights back in. Might even take right next to those highlights and just go pure yellow as well. Kind of interspersed throughout. Something like that. All right, orange pretty much done. Now what I'll say is I'm just doing one pass tonight to show you kind of the process. You can do this stage or any of the stages in multiple passes. Like you could say, paint your open grisaille, then paint your closed grisaille, then go into a limited palette like we did last week and do a pass of the limited palette, and then maybe look at it and say, actually I want to adjust some stuff, and then do another pass of the limited palette, right? And then when you get to this stage, you could do a pass of this full palette, going over everything, and then come back to it a day later or so and look at it and say, maybe I want to tweak some stuff, and then it'll all be dry, or at least dry to the touch, then you just do another pass, right? You just keep doing that until you're kind of happy with it. But this final stage is kind of like can be multiple days worth of painting depending on how you want to operate. For this project, obviously, we're not going to worry about it. We're just going to do it once, kind of get it done with, since it's going to be due next week. But for future projects, for next week's demo and beyond, feel free to do multiple stages. Like if you give yourself enough time to like get your grisaille done, get your first color pass done, then you have multiple days to just fiddle with this and do pass after pass after pass to really build up color, build up paint. That's totally cool. You know, you can do this in multiple stages. I'm going to try a couple little yellow ochre highlights as well, just to see what happens. Ooh, I like that. They're not really highlights. They're kind of like mid-lights, if that's a thing, but it adds a little bit of texture to it, which I like. Remember, even though you can't see my face, I'm squinting pretty heavily when I'm looking at these shadows. Really generalizing with that squint. Kind of the whole way through, you know, squinting all over. But yeah, squint, squint, squint. Okay, now, orange is pretty much done. Background's pretty much done. All we have left is the leaf. So I'm going to clear out a little bit of an area here so I can get some clean greens because, as we all know, red, which all of this has red in it, is the complementary color to greens. And if I want really nice, clean, vibrant greens, can't really have it anywhere near red, just in case. Kind of that safeguard. So we're just going to scrape all this off because I don't think we'll need this again. All right. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse my brush because even though this is a yellow, technically like a yellow-orange, it's still an orange, which means there's red in this color, even if it's not a lot. And I don't want anything that's going to risk dulling down those greens. Right? So I'm going to rinse this out. Then dry it off with a towel. Now we're good to go. Okay. So now, same thing as with the orange, only now instead of working with reds and yellows, we're going to work with yellows and blues. So I'm going to mix up a couple of greens. We're going to go with our ivory black and yellow ochre from last week. Get that nice dull green in there. And this is mainly just to see what the paints do together, right? I might not even use this green, but I want to kind of get it down so I can see, oh, okay, that's kind of what these two colors operate as now. Even though we had them last week, so we know, we can see them again. Now we're going to go with ivory black. Ivory black again, and then now our really bright, vibrant yellow and our cadmium yellow, and see what kind of green this makes. A little bit more vibrant green, which makes sense because it's a more vibrant yellow. Now we're going to go yellow ochre. We'll put it right underneath here. And ultramarine blue, which should be a similar but more saturated and a little bit lighter version of the black and yellow, because again, our black is a dull blue, so there's no reason to think that a true blue plus our yellow ochre wouldn't give us a slightly more vibrant version of that. Then we have our yellow and our ultramarine, which gives us kind of a nice light green, depending on how much yellow we add in. That will be very useful here. And then we have our little convenience color of phthalo green. Now, phthalo already comes as a really nice blue, kind of emeraldy green, right? Now, if we take that phthalo and we add yellow ochre to it, it becomes a little more opaque and actually kind of starts to act like Viridian. It's a little bit warmer than Viridian because we put yellow ochre in it, but it becomes a nice opaque, a little bit less intense green. Now if we do the same thing, phthalo green, and then our cadmium yellow, we're going to get a nice, rich jewel tone yellow. Or jewel tone green, sorry. Again, we go through a lot of yellow with this one because all of our colors over here have yellow in it in some way or another. I've tried to keep these roughly the same value too, so you can kind of see the difference. Except for the pure phthalo green, obviously, because it's a very dark color. But now you can kind of see the range of greens. Some of them are way too saturated for what we need, right? In fact, this is kind of a good base, I think. Right here. Something kind of like that. All right, add some medium to it. Let's go ahead and start working on our leaf. And now, because of how relatively weak the tinting strength is of our black and yellow ochre green, the very dull green from last week, we can actually apply a little bit of green, our more rich, vibrant green, squeeze out most of that paint, try to get it nice and clean, and then grab some of that dull green from last week, that black and yellow ochre, and come in and kind of use it as a mid-tone and kind of paint into the green that we just put down, because the green that we just put down is so much more vibrant that it just takes over that mixture. So you're actually very subtly blending out into a dark green. So now we'll kind of dip into that phthalo green just for a couple dark accents. Again, you want to be careful with phthalo green because it's really intense. And actually, what you can even do is you can actually dull it a little bit with the burnt umber, because again, burnt umber is a weak red, so it's not going to kill the green entirely, but it will dull it slightly and make it a little bit darker and take it a little bit more opaque and kill some of the intensity, which is all good things when you're talking about phthalo green. Same thing for Viridian to a certain degree. It'll have the added benefit when mixing it with Viridian of making your mixture slightly more translucent, because the burnt umber is a fairly transparent color and the Viridian is a very opaque color. In this regard, it's basically two transparent colors with the burnt umber and the phthalo green, but it'll definitely make it darker and it'll definitely knock back some of that green intensity that the phthalo brings. And that burnt umber, using burnt umber with any of these greens will do the same thing. And now I don't want this to be super homogeneous, right? I don't want it to just be like paint by numbers, everything here is green. So I'm actually going to throw in a little bit of red for the darks inside of here. Echo some of that warmth that's happening around it. And honestly, this is a situation too where, specifically with the green, because I have such an intense green with the phthalo, I may want to do 2 passes at this and go very oversaturated with the first pass and kind of dull it back with the second pass, right, of full palette paint application. Because it was hard to get these greens last week, to get anything that even looked like green last week. That I think going for a little bit more just raw intensity with the color and then kind of rubber banding back on it would be one way. It wouldn't be it's not the definitive way, but it would be one way to tackle getting these green hues and green values correct. But we're going to keep plugging away at it just to kind of give it a shot and see what we can do. See what we can do in one go at it. All right, grab some white. That got a little too cool, so I'm going to throw in that highlight some cadmium yellow to keep it bright, but take it back towards a more green color, not as blue. Because again, white's a very cool color. A lot of people like to think of white as something that just makes your paint lighter. That's not always the case. White is a very, very cool color. That's why I keep it over here next to the blues, right? Not only because it's on the opposite end of the black, but it's a very, very cool color. Really, the black could even go somewhere in here, but I like to keep my, if I had it, raw umber, and then ivory black and burnt umber together, because those are my very neutral primaries, and then I work into my yellows, my reds, then my blues, leading up into the cool color of the white. But again, ivory black is a very cool color as well. You know, a lot of people would look at black and just say, oh, that's what we use to darken things. Again, not true. That's actually the wrong way to use black, just like assigning the job of we only use white to lighten things is to white. That's a bad job for white, a bad way to think about white. Same thing with black. It's a bad way to think about the black. You instead want to think of it more as like this is a dull neutral blue that is very dark, yes, but it's a dull neutral blue first. This is a very cool light first. Yes, it will still lighten, and yes, we use it to lighten things, but the main purpose of it is a cool light. It's a very, very cool light, an opaque light. So try to kind of, it's a different way to think about white and black, and really any color. Think of it for the color, not necessarily for the application. That's why I'm not one of those people that really hates the use of black or hates the use of burnt umber. It's right color, right place, right? It's with everything. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. Think of it more of what the color is, as opposed to assigning a job to the painting or to the paint, right? Like brown is not, or burnt umber is not just our underpainting color. We can use it for its actual color of a dull, neutral, darker red, right? Same thing with the black, same thing with the white, etc. Think of it for the color and what the color can be used for. Don't just arbitrarily assign jobs to your paints. Hope that made sense. That felt a little ranty, but passionate about this stuff, you know? So mixing up a little bit more of a like lime kind of color, if you want to call it that. A very yellow green. A light yellow green. And I'm just kind of dry brushing in some of these veins in the leaf here. That's another thing too. If you're looking for something that has a lot of detail, you'll want to get detail in multiple passes, right? I'm not really going to be able to get detail with this. It'll be the illusion of detail, but there won't be like true like hyper realistic detail. That comes with multiple layers of this. You know, I'd probably do this same layering every day this week, and probably then by the end of it start getting to these veins and everything in the, specifically these veins in the leaf, you know. So don't try and go for detail right away either. Still squint, still work general to specific. You know, again, the mantra, general to specific, light to dark, back to front, thin to thick. Or general to specific, back to front, dark to light, thin to thick. In that order. All right. Get a nice cool light going with the white. All right, we're going to be wrapping up here. So if you have any final questions, let me know. But I'm just going to paint into the stem, and then we'll call it. Final questions about the process, about really anything. If you have a material question, if you have, you know, project question, turning question, whatever. For my painting students, for those of you two are still here, tomorrow night, so we have, at my other job, we have a kind of a big delivery. I'm not sure when we'll actually get back tomorrow night. So the critique, still planning to do it tomorrow night, but the time might have to be a sort of play by ear kind of a situation. I want to try to do it at stream time or a little bit earlier, but again, I'm not sure when we're going to get back. You know, it's an hour each way for the delivery, and it's a lot of work that we're delivering, and we're probably going to have to hang a lot of it too. So I'll keep you all updated via email. If we don't do the critique tomorrow night, we will do the critique sometime this week. We will do a critique this week. But just letting you know that because of the kind of scheduling of this delivery tomorrow, might not make it home in time to, you know, get showered, get cleaned up, and get ready for a critique. So just a heads up there. Hopefully you're both still here. I'm going to send you an email about it after the stream if you're not. But if Melanie and Jen, if you're still here and you heard that, if you can just give me a confirmation in chat, let me know. Cool. All right, so that's Jen. Mel, did you hear that announcement about the critique this week? If not, I'll email you. I'm fine doing that. I just save myself the email. All right, a couple little touches here to bring the orange back out behind here, behind the stem. And then, poop. All right. Toss in this highlight. Completely screw it up. And go back in and have to fix it. Happens all the time. All right. Okay. Any questions on this? Any final thoughts? All right, if anybody is here from my figure drawing class or my painting students, I'm going to, after this demo tonight, not going to happen every night, but could not do the portrait drawing demo last night, so I'm going to, or figure drawing rather, demo last night, so I'm going to demo for figure drawing after this stream ends. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the stream, change the title of the stream, and then restart the stream so that it's just easier to add the videos to the playlist later tonight. So for my painting students, if you want to hang around and watch a figure drawing demo, it'll be the Chaos to Order demo. Feel free, you don't have to, but why not? Same channel, whatever. And then for my figure drawing people, you'll see the stream go down. Be patient. It'll come right back up with a new title in like a couple minutes or so. I'm going to take a quick break between them, so it'll have the stream starting soon banner going. But yeah, that's what we'll be doing tonight. So if you have any questions, any final questions, let me know. Or feel free to stick around and ask questions during the figure drawing stream. But If there's no final questions from my painting students, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream and start getting cleaned up. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Again, like I said, the stream is going to go down, and then it's going to come right back up with a new title for the painting student, or the figure drawing students. So, thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you in a couple of minutes.